Ashwin, it's wonderful to have you in the show.
I would say like red team, blue team is kind of like one avenue of what we do as part of the threat research. Most of the detections were authored by Microsoft. There are like also like large of community contributions that we have where various researchers or like various people have also submitted detections that has now become a part of the product as well. So if you're not aware of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I think they just like probably a simple introduction about is it's basically a framework or like collection of real world adversaries and then techniques that they use. You really need to assess as an organization like which actors are likely targeted, which actors are likely to target your organizations or your business sector, and then which techniques are basically used most often by those actors. I think Jupyter Notebook is basically just a live document where you can combine like your kind of text notes along with the live code that you can run. So basically similar to the compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? But using that analogy in relation to the knowledge. So keep learning small things, and then it will eventually lead you to success in the long run.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Scale to Zero. I'm Purushottam, co-founder and CTO of Cloudanix. For today's episode, we have Ashwin Patil with us. Ashwin currently works as a senior security researcher for Microsoft Security Research Team and has been working in security monitoring and incident response for over a decade. In his current role, he primarily works on threat hunting, detection research using KQL, which is the custom query language for Microsoft Sentinel, and develops Jupyter Notebooks to do threat hunting investigation across both cloud and on-premise data sources. He has previously spoken at conferences such as JupyterThon, Sans Purple Team Summit, Blue Team Village on threat hunting on cloud datasets and using Jupyter Notebooks. So, Ashwin, it's wonderful to have you in the show. For our audience, do you want to briefly share about your journey?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for giving the opportunity and inviting me for this podcast. So yeah, I think you covered most of the introduction. I think I started my career as a MSSP, as a SOC analyst in India, and then worked for Cisco primarily for 3-4 years, and then since like now over 9 years, I've been working with Microsoft. Most of the roles have been pretty much on the same parts like SOC, SIEM, and security monitoring, incident response, or those channels. In my current role, I'm primarily focused on the cloud security due to the product that I'm currently working on. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you in the show because there are certain areas which we have not covered in our podcast, like usage of Jupyter Notebook and how you are using it for threat hunting. I'm curious. I want to learn more about it. So the way we do the show is we have two sections. The first section focuses on the security question, and the second section is mostly around rapid fire. So let's start with the security questions, right? So when it comes to threat hunting, threat detection, there are many areas like bug bounty, pen test, vulnerability research, threat research. So when it comes to cloud, what area do you cover? Like, does your work cover?
Yeah. So yeah, right now, like I'm part of the Microsoft Security Research, which is like is a broader umbrella of various research teams working in relation to the security. Uh, Under that, I'm part of XDR and SIEM team, which basically deals with the product like M365 and Microsoft Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm primarily focused on the threat research part rather than the other components like pen test, bug bounty, and other things. The other things does come into picture like whenever there is an incident related to, let's say, bug bounty or like reported vulnerability by a researcher or that sort of things. But
Mm-hmm.
the primary focus is like threat research, doing uh, research on related to various cloud attack paths, writing detections on those cloud data sources, and also like working with the product groups if they're developing certain features which requires the analyst or like a researcher perspective. So yeah.
Okay. So I have a follow-up question on this. Like, how does it differ from the way traditional red teaming or blue teaming activities are performed?
Yeah, so I would say like the red team, blue team is kind of like one avenue of what we do as part of the threat research. Again, the threat
Okay.
research can be fueled by various sources. So the pen test, red team, or that can be like one source of information that can basically spin up the ideas for the telemetry gaps detections that we need to develop. But apart from that, I think there are various other sources where we get kind of a requirement or like ideas about developing new detections, such as like let's say a new telemetry is available by a
Mm-hmm.
cloud vendor, like how do we, or new attack path is published by a researcher, how do we detect those things, and then basically doing like research, backend research, understanding like what telemetry is available to detect those attacks, and then how do we write detections from our platform, like which is Microsoft Sentinel, and then
Mm-hmm.
query language that we use is basically Custo query language. So most of our work have been published as a open source GitHub that's
Okay.
available to everyone that they can check. So that's good in a way that people can refer those same logic and then probably also write similar kind of detections on other platforms or things.
Yeah. So the GitHub repo that you highlighted, I have used that in the past as well. For
Mhm.
our audience, what we'll do is we'll tag that GitHub repo when we publish the video, so that they can also get benefit out of the research that you guys are doing, the new attack paths that you have studied, and your findings and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, like one thing that I would probably just highlight is like the GitHub kind of allows you to get inputs from the community members as well. So even though like probably most of the detections were authored by Microsoft, there are like also like
mhm,
large of community contributions that we have where various researchers or like various people have also submitted detections that has now become a part of the product as well. So yeah, yeah,
mhm.
definitely a good way to know about like what is out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. One of the things that you highlighted is you look at the attack paths as well, right? And you try to classify the threats and stuff like that. And there are many frameworks to do it, right? And one of the most popular is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Um how should organizations leverage both the framework, let's say the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and also the research, the GitHub repo that you have highlighted, right? How should organizations leverage that to improve their own security?
Yeah, so so if you're not aware of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I think the just like probably a simple introduction about is it's basically a framework or like collection of real world adversaries and then techniques that they use, right? So
Mm-hmm,
it is actually a need for the security industry to have such kind of framework that's been adopted by uh, vendor as well as the researchers as well, so that we know like where we are in terms of detection coverage and other things, right?
mm-hmm,
So again, I mean, there are various ways that you can go after, like how do we operationalize that MITRE ATT&CK framework. And again, there are various guidelines that I would probably recommend to read, like from MITRE ATT&CK, their own blogs,
mm-hmm.
where they have basically outlined how does an organization operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then also there are like various industry experts or like researchers or the members who have basically operationalized that framework in their organization, right? So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reading material out there
Mm-hmm.
already. But what I would say shortly is basically the framework is a kind of pointer to uh, if you don't have anything to get started. So it's a good
Mm-hmm.
pointer to get started and then looking at where we should go next and where we should fill the gaps and other things. Again, there's like a holistic approach that you need to do, basically understanding Uh, Also, like, make an assumption that framework is not a complete perspective of all the techniques that are available out there, right?
Right. Right.
So you really need to assess as an organization, like, which actors are likely targeted, which actors are likely to target your organizations or your business sector, and then which techniques are basically used most often by those actors, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then understanding, like, again, what data sources that you have available, and then maybe create like a kind of a high level plan on how do we go after this detection program as a whole, right?
Okay.
And then again, like, this is again just a pointer to uh, uh, kind of understand like where we stand in terms of detection coverage. Again,
Mm-hmm.
there can be like various ways that a certain technique can be detected. So it's not like if you have a detection for that specific techniques, then you are covered, right? So there can be
Yeah.
like multiple ways that you can detect a certain technique, right? So
Hmm.
again, these are like some of the points that you should be think through before
Mm-hmm.
you start with that. And then there's more comprehensive reading that you should go after, and then read MITRE ATT&CK papers and blogs and the uh, uh, articles that people have published on how they have operationalized successfully in their organization.
Right. It makes a lot of sense, right? One thing that stood out from what you said is it's not that it's final. Like whatever is documented, that's final. It's
Right.
evolving as well, right? There are new threat techniques are coming up, or new attack vectors are coming up. So it's always good to stay up to date and apply those whichever is applicable to your organization. And another thing that you highlighted is it's like there are many techniques and many areas, right? So in your mind, do you have like top five areas that you look for from a threat hunting or blue teaming perspective?
Yeah, I mean, again, this question is very debatable. I believe, like, you can. The one way that I'll probably approach this is understanding the broader trend reports. So I think one thing that we have recently seen is the CrowdStrike publishes the threat trend report, where they have
Mm-hmm.
basically outlined, like, let's say, what are the top techniques that they have seen
Mm-hmm.
like most of attacks being used, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, you can pick up, like, depending upon in which area that you are working, uh, there can be like specific techniques that may be available. Again, most of the I believe, like, those reports is also focused most on the Windows or like on premises side. There are like
Mm-hmm.
other reports that may be available for cloud security or like cloud attack paths. But yeah, again, I think it really depends upon where or like which attacks that you prominently are seeing. Real
Mm-hmm.
world attacks, such as if you take an example of Capital One breach, like there's certain techniques that is available in order to get initial access. So valid
Mm-hmm.
accounts or exploiting the public facing websites are kind of like
Right.
or password spraying the organizations are kind of like initial access techniques that you can get started. And then there can be other techniques that are available in other MITRE ATT&CK tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's more around what applies to your organization and what attack paths or what is the exploitability for your setup. Maybe follow those rather than just going through top five somebody has documented, right? That makes a lot of sense. Um, one so now coming from like reading about the attack frameworks, threat hunting, now doing the actual work, right? So there are when it comes to threat hunting, many team members work right on this, and there are many tools also are used.
Mhm.
And this is one of the areas we have not covered yet in our podcast is around how do you use, let's say, Jupyter notebook or like any threat hunter playbooks that you use for your threat hunting work. So since you use Jupyter Notebook a lot, can you just briefly tell us what does Jupyter Notebook do? How does it work?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah. I think Jupyter Notebook is not like a new technology. It has been used in other areas like finance, also as well as the education space, like to teach certain tutorials and other things.
Mm-hmm.
But very recently, or like not very, I mean, I would say like in the last few years, we have seen the adoption of that in the security industry as well. And specifically, I have been involved in the specific conference, the Jupyter-thon, which was all about like how does various organizations are using the Jupyter notebooks, right? So I believe like before we go into the start, I think Jupyter Notebook is basically just a live document where you
Mm-hmm.
can combine like your kind of text notes along with
Okay.
the live code that you can run, right? So think of it like a live document which can have like your incident response playbook, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the instructions, but you can also include the queries and then get inline outputs in the same document, right?
Okay.
So uh, there can be like various use cases where you can go and use that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the automation is not like the area that probably Jupyter Notebook is solving. There are also like other specific tools available, like logic apps and other things that allows you to do this kind of like step by step instruction and then make it as a workflow and then run repeatedly, right?
Mm-hmm.
What Jupyter Notebook is capable is you can really write complex language code such as like Python visualization libraries and also like various other let's say ML detection approaches and then incorporate those into the Jupyter notebooks. So you can really take the capability of that live code thing
Mm-hmm.
in whatever way that you want, right? So think of it to use from a visualization perspective, or think of it from a detection perspective, or like maybe implementing any complex workflows which requires like various getting data from various data sources and then doing some munging and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe making some changes along the way and then publishing outputs to finally to your SIEM platform, right? So yeah, there are like various use cases, and again there are various interesting stuff that if you want to see like how organizations are using, you can definitely check the Jupyter-thon, the couple of conferences that we have done recently
Okay.
that has like various talks that are available, like how various companies are using Jupyter notebooks in various other use cases.
Yeah, so I like how it combines both the notebook, as in you are just taking notes, and also the playground aspect, right? Where you
Right.
can experiment with your data. And I've seen a lot of adoption around ML use cases, right?
Right.
You pass the data, you run some model, and you have the output as well, all part of the same notebook. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, how do you use it for your threat research?
Yeah. So I mean, in our scenarios, we are basically publishing various customer scenarios that customers can adopt in their environment. So, few of the things that we have done in the past is like kind of templatizing the common investigation workflows, right? So, let's say when an incident happens, there are some series of steps that customer wants to do,
Hmm.
such as like pivoting across various data sources, gathering the context, and then making it available right away in that notebook, right? So that the analyst or the investigator do not have to time spent on executing those queries, right? Once they know that there are some series of steps that needs to be done on a regular basis when an incident occurs, such as
Hmm.
gathering those contexts and then making that available. So that is one use case. Again, there are specific notebooks that are available where we can showcase various anomaly detection approaches by such as ML libraries or like statistics approaches. So
Okay.
very recently, we published a blog post on the anomaly detection approaches using Isolation Forest. So that part is also like incorporated as a part of Jupyter Notebook that people can basically use it in relation to any other data sources.
Okay. Makes sense. And we'll also like gather the blog post details from you, and we'll share that with our audience so that they can also benefit from it. Um, so one of the things that you highlighted is like you have playbooks, right? When there is an incident occurs, what should organizations do? And what we have read, what we have noticed is when there is a security incident, most organizations are not prepared. They're not sure how to handle it, right? How should they be dealing the attack? And particularly if it is happening for the first time, where they are not sure at all, right? So how should the organization determine the level of the event in that case? Like what severity that event is, and how can they, once they understand what is the level, how do they mitigate that and ensure that there is minimal damage which is caused?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think this question has like a lot of avenues. Uh, what I would start with again is having the right incident response plan, and then
Hmm.
preparedness is very essential if you have never handled a security incident, right? So first of all, like documenting what one should do when an incident occurs, like how do we engage various teams, various stakeholders. If you are a part of broader org where there are like various teams, how do we engage those teams on a quick basis, and then engage and then basically operationalize any mitigation plan if you want to, is first of all very essential.
Hmm.
That can come under the preparation or the planning approaches. Uh, Again, if you have never handled an incident, maybe it's a good idea to start conducting some tabletop exercises and then see like where do you stand if an incident occurs. uh, so that will give you a capability to understand like how do we assess the incident scope. uh, Primarily, like if you want to understand the scope of the incident, is pretty much like comes down to how do we assess the impact of like what are the systems are affected, which
Hmm.
areas of your organizations are affected, right? And then based on that impact, maybe there can be like variety of mitigations that may be available, such as let's say if an incident related to a specific vulnerability, maybe first identifying the impacted systems, and
Hmm.
then maybe going through your inventory and understanding like these systems are impacted, and then maybe engaging the right stakeholders to basically implement that mitigation plan, deploying patches, or doing various other if there are no patches, then maybe find out some workarounds to minimize the impact, such as like probably if it's a public facing vulnerability, maybe how do we deploy network level rules to minimize the impact. So yeah, I think it's kind of subjective, like, and requires like different uh, uh, context to basically answer that. But yeah, I would
Right.
say like preparedness, conducting tabletop exercises. Again, there's various material available from CERT and other things that you can refer,
Hmm.
which kind of provides like a good framework on how should we define those processes and documents.
Okay, that makes sense. So having a plan and also doing fire drill exercises so that you know your preparedness. So
Hmm.
you do threat hunting, and you might have some findings from there, and you have an incident plan. Do you think combining these two would help organizations in understanding any exploitability of their environment and prevent any incident to reoccur in future?
Yeah. I mean, there definitely. I mean, lessons learned is probably the last step of the incident response plan, right? So
Hmm.
whenever an incident is kind of close, what lessons that you have learned from that incident, and then how do we make sure that to incorporate that plan into as part of your uh, regular workflows. So let's say patch
Hmm.
is kind of required as part of the incident, like maybe going back and then seeing like how does that patch kind of aligns with your patch guidelines and other workflows, right?
Hmm.
So yeah. I mean, it kind of connecting the dots back to your processes and then
Right.
improving those processes so that to make sure that how do we make sure that as part of the root cause analysis of that incident, how do we basically prevent that not happening that incident again.
In future. Okay. That makes sense. So in a way, it's a loop, right? You got an
Yes.
incident, you do a review of what you learned, use that for your threat hunting again, and it becomes a cycle so that you improve that process for future. Um, the last question that I have around this is, let's say somebody who wants to start their career in threat hunting or cloud security in general, where should they start from?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like this is a very, uh, uh, I guess, rich edge to live in. If you're
Hmm.
starting with security, there are various resources available. I mean, if I remember like 12, 15 years back when I started my career, there were very limited resources. Understanding the technical aspects, there were like less resources available, maybe reading through books and understanding like what's happening. But
Hmm.
in this age, I think there are various resources available. So I would say like if you're starting up with the security with your career, and then you want to gain into the threat hunting or cloud security in general, maybe understanding like which role you want to go after. There are
Hmm.
again various kind of career path that exist in those areas, which are very broad, like
Hmm.
threat hunting, cloud security, right? So understanding what you want to do, and then probably maybe creating like a kind of study plan or kind of a plan that you wanted to do in order to achieve that, right?
Hmm.
So
Okay.
for example,
Makes
like I
sense.
mean in my case, like if you really wanted to be a threat hunting or a detection engineer or a threat researcher, maybe starting with again, I started with understanding of operating system and system administration, or those concepts. That's
Hmm.
kind of like foundational level knowledge that's required, and then that has been helpful for me in many parts of my career. So
Okay.
after having that foundation, maybe again in relation to cloud, maybe understanding like how are the various cloud platform works,
Hmm.
what is the various core components that exist when we say that a cloud, when we say that we have moved to the cloud, right? And then in relation to security, it's basically understanding like again, you can start with like attack framework, detection engineers. So there are again similar to MITRE ATT&CK framework, there are other frameworks exist in relation to detection such as Sigma,
Hmm.
and then there are also like similar kind of rule sets that are available from other vendor, like Elastic has their own uh, rules repository, and then various research organizations can have like similar way, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
having knowledge
Makes sense.
that what's out there, maybe following certain peoples who are like industry leaders on social media. Maybe you'll not understand half of the things that they say in your initial phases, but then
Right.
over the period, I think you will get understanding of, and then probably able to use some of the things that they have said in your part of the world. So yeah, I'm
Right.
not sure like kind of gives a structured plan, but I think those are like few things that I would mention on a high level.
Yeah.
Like if
I think the thing that stood out is the basics, right? Understanding if you are going for cloud security, maybe understand how the cloud operates in detail, so that you have better knowledge of how it works. If you are going for more traditional, then maybe look at how the operating system works, networks work, and stuff like that. So yeah, those make sense. So a follow-up question on that is, any reference material that you use, or any blogs, podcasts, videos, and on top of that, any tools that you use? I know that you use Jupyter Notebook quite a bit. Other than that, any other tools that you use which somebody who is starting can benefit from?
Yeah, I think there are again. I primarily use social media again. I have like certain researchers that I follow, and then
Hmm.
I've created like a kind of Twitter list out of those cloud security researchers.
Hmm.
So there are like various blogs, articles, and newsletters that are get published on those on a weekly basis, or like maybe more frequent, that I
Hmm.
follow. So having that curated list is kind of, I start with those things, and
Okay.
then probably maybe cherry pick up some of the things that I do as part of the work, such
Hmm.
as which are related to mostly related to like threat detections and other things. So yeah, I think there are like various research firms like Viz. Again, like there are other firms that are continuously publish like threat
Right.
research
Right.
blogs, and then there are also like various researchers like Dr. Nestori, which publishes a lot of articles around like AD internals and various attack techniques. So understanding what is published out there, and then probably following those things, and how do we basically deploy detection on those things.
Okay. Makes sense. So what we'll do is we'll tag some of these when we publish the video so that our audience can also go there and learn
Yeah.
from the same resources. So yeah, that's a great way to end the security questions. Here are a few important points I could gather. The first one is when it comes to hunting exercises, instead of focusing on like the top fives of the world, focus on areas which are applicable and can be exploited in your architecture. The second one is as part of your incident response plan, conduct frequent fire drill or tabletop exercises to evaluate preparedness. The third one is learning from a security incident is one of the best ways to improve threat hunting process. So let's go to the rapid fire section now. The first question is a one-liner code that keeps you going.
Yeah, so I think this is from the book that I've read a few months back, Atomic Habits. I think it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
a quote basically: becoming a lifelong learner can really leverage on the compounding ability of knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically similar to the compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right?
Right.
But using that analogy in relation to the knowledge. So keep learning small things, and then it will eventually lead you to success in the long term. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
I agree. I have read that book as well.
Yeah.
So it's all about like if you improve 1% every day, at the
Yeah.
end of the year, you have improved a lot compared to folks who are maybe not even doing that, right? So yeah, spot on. Um, the second question is, if you were a superhero of cybersecurity, which power would you choose to have in you?
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, like from a threat hunting and maybe on the similar terms, if I had to choose, I think Hawkeye is probably a superhero, and then maybe having that instead of like a bow and arrow, I would probably use like a keyboard and some of the queries that I can use to get like probably catch the bad guys, right? So I mean, that kind of have like a similar analogy, and then having that power of maybe hunting for bad guys using
Hmm.
the keyboard
Yeah.
and queries that I can.
No, no, no. Makes sense for technology people. It makes a lot of sense, right? So the last question is three blogs or books or websites which you go to stay up to date.
Yeah, so I think recently I've been a fan of the newsletters, so which kind of gives like a curated list of blogs and other things. So I think
Mm-hmm,
there are a couple of newsletters that I've subscribed to. Is the CloudSec list is a
mm-hmm,
very good one, which is really resonates to what I do on a day-to-day basis about the cloud security. TLDR sec is also another one which has like a good curated list of articles that you want to publish.
mm-hmm.
Apart from that, again, the social media is kind of like a good kind of dopamine to get new ideas, and then adding those kind
Right.
of new articles and new blogs, right? So yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
those are my go-to list. Again, with the social media, it always gets like distracting, and then maybe move across like on going on various other things. But yeah, if you want to be focused on maybe starting with those curated lists is a good way.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned those two blogs, right? Because I also have subscribed. I also get updates from there. And then again, the third point which you highlighted is like have some curated researcher or threat hunters that you follow, so that you also learn from their learnings, right? In a way. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah, thank you so much, Ashwin, for coming to the show, sharing your knowledge. I learned around Jupyter Notebook, which I had no idea. Threat hunting. I learned some more details around that as well. So yeah, thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for giving this opportunity, and it's good to always connect with various people and industries to get the insight. So thank you for the opportunity for bringing me on the show and then sharing those insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have learned something new. If you have any questions around security, share those at scale20.com. Get those answered by an expert in the security space. With this, we end our season one. Thanks for sticking with us and be part of our journey. We'll be starting our season two soon and hope to see you there. Thank you.